If there is one style of deck that people will give you a high praise for actually running with it, it's definitely a Highlander style deck. So for those who don't know what Highlander means, it essentially means that the deck consists of no more than one copy of the card with this particular name. And Vanguard has been trying to play around with this concept multiple times throughout its history, with some of the more well-known examples of course being V Highlander and Chaos in the current standard. And to be fair, this is a third attempt that Bushiroad decided to go with the Highlander format for the deck playstyle, and I do feel this is the most successful one. And it's a little bit interesting because it is a Divines deck that is named after the word ever-changing Krysrain. And as usual, today I'm gonna be talking about what the deck does, what is a good part of the deck, what is a bad point, and yeah, I hope that keep the discussion going as usual. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with the right line, and there's not much to say about the art, but for some reason it reminded me of something. Anyway, let's talk about the effect, and this one will not take too long because both grade 1 and grade 2 does have a very similar effect. When a specific unit wrote upon them, you can check top card of your deck and you can either call the card if it falls into the condition. So for grade 1 is grade 2 or less, and for grade 2 is grade 3 or less, or you put it into your hand. The skill is okay in my honest opinion. It does work as a budget option, as not a lot of people is gonna have a Villistar right line lying around somewhere most of the time, and of course the gem card. But I do have to say, if you want to compare Villistar with Krysrain right line, it is obvious which choice I will pick. It's a Villistar right line. You see, a lot of strong support from Critical do require Soul Blast, and a few of the cards that you do want to run in this deck also do need Soul Blast. So because of that, having Villistar helping you to build the soul at the earlier part of the game actually helps a lot. And on the other hand, the draw 2 is more or less the same amount of resources that you use compared to the Krysrain red line.
No, he's got a point.
The difference being, you at least filter one card out of your deck by with the star effects. Then we can immediately jump into the main boss of this deck, Fated One of Ever-Changing Krysrain. Krysrain, just like any other divine skill unit, also have 2 skills, but her skill there is a lot of layers to it, but it is actually quite simple. So let's start off with the non-divine skill. Act once per turn, counter blast one, and perform one of the following. If you have 4 or more units with different names under your field, you activate 2 of them, and if you manage to have 5 or more units with different name on your field, you can activate all of these effects. And those following effects are: draw a card and energy charge 3. This is a one single skill. Choose one of your unit plus 15k until end of turn, and then this unit get 1 critical until the end of turn. So yeah, this is a very simplistic but a very good power gaining skill. And the fact that you get a lot of energy and draw coming from it is actually rewarded you for actually being aggressive with your calling. Of course, against certain deck this might not be the best, but I do have to say the support that comes with Krysrain does play into that part, and she does work well with some of the support that Relical already has for the longest time. And then we have the divine skill.
Damn, boy, he's sick!
At the end of the battle, this unit attack grade 3 or greater unit, you return all your grade card to hand, choose up to 1 unit card from your hand, call it to raid card circle, and until the end of turn, increase or decrease that unit powers and critical to match this unit. This is actually quite a powerful skill as it seems. There's not too many layers about it, but boil down to the fact that this is one of the very few ways that the deck can gain additional attack in this deck, as this is a 3 attack deck. But at the same time, the fact that you return all raid card from deck to hand also means that if you misfired any of the search effect in this deck, it doesn't matter because of the fact that you will able to return all of those cards back to hand anyway thanks to this divine skill. On top of that, this unit clone her power onto the unit that was called by this effect. And this is actually a really good effect, especially not a lot of cards does hit very hard in Krysrain at the moment. Yes, you do have a few cards that gain like 10k, 15k, but it does come at a heavy cost. So the fact that Krysrain actually cloned her own power onto the raid card that was called by the divine skill is actually a huge deal. For one, the power gain is quite a lot most of the time and is usually high enough to ask opponent for a lot of cards from their hand, but also a magic number, on top of the fact that Krysrain already has an innate critical thanks to her own skill. So because of that, you always guarantee to have 2 attack that has more than 1 critical when you're using the divine skill, which is something that not a lot of decks has a luxury of. But of course, it's not all sunshine for Krysrain, as she does pose a few little issues. For one, you do need 5 different units with different names to actually get her full skill out, and that can kind of get into the situation where you might not be able to activate the full effects if you draw luck are not that lucky, or you do draw into multiple cards that you run multiple copy of. Very similar situation with the Chaos deck. On top of that, this is a 3 attack deck without the divine skill, so you do have to think of when to hit with the divine skill, because in my honest opinion, this is the most important aspect of the deck, as you can only use it once per game, and once you use it, you have to stuck with 3 attack for the rest of the game. Fortunately enough, the deck did get a few supports that is actually significant and really help to fix some of these issues that Krysrain actually has. Let's start off with the grade 3 rare card that every single divine skill deck did get in this booster, Vivid Flush Visme. When this is an attack grade 3 or greater unit, if you have grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Krysrain in its name, counterblast 1, this unit gets
plus 15k for that battle.
Among the grade 3 rare card that each of the divine skill deck get, this is the simplest one, but it's also the one that can be a very easily abusable, as of the fact that it's so easy to activate. If you time the effect wrongly, you might run into the situation where you might not be able to activate additional skill next turn thanks to her requirement of counterblast 1 every single turn. And in my honest opinion, this is far from being the best initial support of Krysrain, as the only situation that this card works or helpful in is during the divine skill, because because of the fact that her effect is so simple, you can just use this card as a target to hit for a really big number. Moving on to the grade 1 aerial stage clone that every divine skill deck did get as well, we got Cynical Composer Ruam, and I think in my opinion this might be the best out of the 4 right now, as her second skill is when this boosts by grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Krysrain in its name, if you have 4 or more units with different card names, Energy Blast 3, until end of that battle, when your opponent would call a card without Sentinel from hand to guard circle, they have to call 3 or more cards with different grade at the same time.
Yeah, baby!
So yes, this card does give you a way to avoid the skill completely by forcing out a PG, but that's the only way for you to get around this effect. Of course, you can use elementary as well, but the fact that there's not a lot of way for you to get around this card is actually a huge deal, especially this is also a 13k booster, and combined with Krysrain's skill and everything, you have an attack that hit at least above subgrade number. That is actually very annoying to guard, as you are forcing to guard with 3 different grades, which is a lot worse than cards like Baphomet or Variant Hard Leg for those who happen to remember the card. Essentially, this is easily one of the most annoying form of Battle Guard Restrict, even though the card does give you a way to escape it completely. And then we have, in my opinion, the most important part of the deck, the grade 2 triple R that every other divine skill get from DZBTO1 blah blah blah, you get the point. And that is Innocence Orange Unnes. And this card is a really good card, as first skill it has is when pressed on Vanguard circle, and if you have Krysrain grade 3 or greater Vanguard, counterblast 1, energy blast 1, look at top 5 of your deck, choose up to 1 unit card among them that do not share the name between your Vanguard and your Vanguard, call it to Vanguard circle and shuffle your deck. This is a very fantastic effect, as not only it helped to achieve the Highlander skill that Krysrain really needs, it also helped you to filter out 1 card out of the deck. And with Krysrain D1 skill, you can just simply call PG out with this effect, and you can just bounce it back with the divine skill or cards like Yoiga in general. So this card has a lot of utility you can play into because of her nature. And then this card also have some ability that can get 10k, and for this case is when this unit attack grade 3 or greater unit and you have 4 or more units with different name on your field, it gets additional 10k until end of that battle. Very simplistic skill and very helpful for the deck, especially as I mentioned earlier, Krysrain Reka column tends to be not very strong, and that is a nice segue to talk about the best part of the deck and the bad part about the deck. Well, for one, this deck is really good at generating resource and energy, partially due to the fact that Recall in general already generate a decent amount of resource. This card just amp it up to a next level thanks to all of her skill in general. And then the card also has a really disgusting guard restrict despite being a 3 attack, which is a really nice thing to have. And of course, you have a way to guarantee 2 big attack that has additional crit through divine skill, which is is really good. But then here is a problem with this deck. As much as the 3 attack aspect of this deck give us one of the most disgusting card restrict we have gotten, it is also one of the biggest weakness because we are in the meta where multi-attack seems to do a better job here, and a lot of cards in this deck doesn't really gain an innate crit aside from Krysrain herself, so you don't really have a lot of way to pressure against the opponent properly despite being a 3 attack deck. And of course, this deck, just like Vanguard, is a really counterblast heavy deck, as you are gonna be using at least 1 to 3 counterblasts every single turn. And on top of that, as much as it generates a lot of energy, it also uses as much as energy. In fact, you might run into the situation where you have the surplus amount of energy if you fail to manage the energy properly. But despite all that, I do still think this is a really good deck, as the deck has enough resource generation, a very interesting way of playing around with the card restrict, and in general just feel right in every spot for a 3 attack deck. But what do you guys think? Do leave down in the comments below, and yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, and this is Mac Mechanic signing out.